Today, we're diving into one of history's most fascinating and terrifying romantic positions, being Cleopatra's lover. And trust me, while it might have had its perks, the downsides were literally deadly. From political assassinations to being caught between warring empires, from dealing with her legendary jealousy to navigating the most complex power dynamics in ancient history, being Cleopatra's lover was essentially signing up for the world's most dangerous relationship. So grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's explore why dating the Queen of the Nile was probably the worst career move you could make in ancient times. Before we dive into the horror stories, let's get one thing straight. Cleopatra wasn't just some pretty face. This woman spoke 9 languages, was educated in mathematics, philosophy, and rhetoric, and was the first Ptolemaic ruler in 300 years to actually learn Egyptian. She was running an empire at 18 years old. Born in 69 BCE, Cleopatra VII Philopator was part of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek Macedonian family that had ruled Egypt since Alexander the Great's conquest. And here's where it gets weird. Her family tree looked more like a family wreath. The Ptolemies had a charming tradition of marrying their siblings to keep power in the family. Cleopatra herself was married to not one, but 2 of her younger brothers. Yes, you heard that right. But Cleopatra wasn't about to share power with anyone, especially not her pre-teen brother husbands. She had bigger plans, and those plans required allies, powerful Roman allies. Which brings us to our first victim, lover. The thing about Cleopatra is that she understood power better than anyone. She knew Egypt's independence hung by a thread, with Rome circling like a vulture. She needed protection, and she was willing to use every weapon in her arsenal to get it. Her intelligence, her wealth, and yes, her legendary charm. Contemporary accounts describe her not as the stunning beauty Hollywood portrays, but as someone with an irresistible presence. Plutarch wrote that her actual beauty was not in itself so remarkable, it was the impact of her spirit that was irresistible. In other words, she had that special something that made powerful men lose their minds. And lose their minds they did. Let's set the scene. It's 48 BCE, and Cleopatra has been kicked out of Egypt by her brother husband Ptolemy the 13th. She needs to get back in power, and fast. Enter Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, who just happens to be in Alexandria chasing his rival Pompey. Now, how do you get a meeting with Caesar when your brother's forces control the city? If you're Cleopatra, you smuggle yourself into the palace rolled up in a carpet. Yes, that actually happened. Imagine being the servant who had to carry that carpet. Don't mind me, just delivering some textiles that happened to contain the rightful queen of Egypt. Caesar was 52, Cleopatra was 21. He was married. She was technically married to her brother. But when has that ever stopped anyone in a good political romance? They began an affair that would shake the ancient world. For Caesar, this seemed like a great deal at first. He got Egypt's wealth backing him, plus a fascinating, intelligent companion who actually understood politics. But here's where it started to suck for him. First, he got dragged into a civil war he didn't need. The Alexandrian War lasted months, with Caesar trapped in the palace while Ptolemy the 13th's forces attacked. He nearly died multiple times. His men were furious about being stuck in Egypt while there was work to be done in Rome. All for what? His Egyptian girlfriend's throne. Then there was the PR nightmare. Romans hated the idea of their leaders falling under the spell of Eastern queens. They saw Cleopatra as everything wrong with the decadent East. Too rich, too powerful, too feminine, too foreign. Caesar's enemies had a field day. Look at our great general, they said, enslaved by a foreign woman's charms. But Caesar was smitten. He stayed in Egypt for months, taking a pleasure cruise down the Nile with Cleopatra, while Rome wondered what the hell he was doing. She showed him the pyramids, the ancient temples, the wealth of Egypt, and somewhere along the way, she got pregnant. When Caesar finally returned to Rome, guess what? Cleopatra followed him, with their son, Caesarion. She set up house in Caesar's villa, scandalizing Roman society. Caesar's wife, Calpurnia, had to endure the humiliation of her husband's foreign mistress living openly in Rome with their illegitimate child. Caesar even put up a golden statue of Cleopatra in the Temple of Venus Genetrix, basically declaring her a goddess. Romans were appalled. This was the kind of Eastern decadence they despised. The rumor mill went into overdrive. Caesar wanted to make himself king, with Cleopatra as his queen. He was going to move the capital to Alexandria. He was going to make Romans worship Egyptian gods. And then came the Ides of March, 44 BCE. Caesar was assassinated, stabbed 23 times by senators who feared he'd become a king. Was his relationship with Cleopatra a factor? You bet it was. His affair with the foreign queen had become a symbol of everything wrong with Caesar's rule. Cleopatra, suddenly without her protector in a hostile foreign city, had to flee Rome with her son. Caesar was dead, and his relationship with her had played a part in his downfall. Not exactly a happy ending. If you thought the Caesar affair was messy, buckle up for Mark Antony. This is where being Cleopatra's lover went from dangerous to absolutely catastrophic. After Caesar's death, Rome was divided between three men: Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, Lepidus, and Mark Antony. Antony got the eastern territories, which meant he needed Egypt's wealth. And Cleopatra, she needed a new Roman protector. Their first meeting in 41 BCE was pure theater. Cleopatra arrived in Tarsus dressed as Aphrodite on a golden barge with purple sails and silver oars. The entire ship was perfumed. She had beautiful attendants dressed as sea nymphs. It was the ancient equivalent of showing up to a date in a Lamborghini filled with supermodels. Antony didn't stand a chance. But here's the thing about Antony, he was already married to Fulvia, one of the most powerful women in Rome, who was literally fighting a war on his behalf back in Italy. When he started his affair with Cleopatra, Fulvia was raising legions to fight Octavian. And what was Antony doing? Partying in Alexandria, dressed up as Dionysus, completely ignoring his responsibilities. The ancient sources describe their relationship as intoxicating. Literally, they formed a drinking society called the Inimitable Livers, where they would feast and drink all night. They played elaborate pranks, with Antony and Cleopatra disguising themselves as commoners and running through the streets of Alexandria causing mischief. For a moment, it must have seemed perfect. Antony was happy. Cleopatra had her protector. They had 3 children together. But the real world has a way of intruding on fantasy. First problem, Fulvia died, and Roman politics demanded Antony return and marry Octavian's sister, Octavia, to keep the peace. So he did. He left Cleopatra and married another woman for political reasons. Imagine being Cleopatra, pregnant with twins, watching your lover marry someone else because it was politically convenient. But Antony couldn't stay away. He went back to Cleopatra, abandoning his Roman wife, which gave Octavian the perfect propaganda weapon. Antony wasn't just unfaithful, he was un-Roman. He'd gone native, preferring the luxurious East to good, honest Roman values. The propaganda war was brutal. Octavian painted Antony as Cleopatra's slave, a man so bewitched he'd given away Roman territories to his foreign mistress and her bastard children. The claim that Antony was planning to make Alexandria the new capital of the Roman Empire spread like wildfire. Then came the donations of Alexandria in 34 BCE, Antony's biggest mistake. In a grand ceremony, he declared Cleopatra and Caesar's son, Caesarion, as rulers of Egypt and Cyprus, and parceled out Roman territories to his children with Cleopatra. He was literally giving away pieces of the Roman Empire to his girlfriend's kids. Rome exploded. This was treason. Octavian read Antony's will to the Senate, illegally obtained from the Vestal Virgins, which supposedly said Antony wanted to be buried in Alexandria, not Rome. The message was clear. Antony had chosen Cleopatra over Rome. The final straw. Antony divorced Octavia by sending her a letter. In Roman culture, this was unforgivable. Octavia was a virtuous Roman matron, and he'd humiliated her for a foreign queen. War was inevitable. By 31 BCE, it was Octavian versus Antony and Cleopatra for control of the Roman world. And here's where being Cleopatra's lover really sucked for Antony. The Battle of Actium should have been Antony's to win. He was the experienced general, the hero of Philippi. But Cleopatra's presence changed everything. Roman soldiers didn't want to fight for a foreign queen. Many of Antony's allies defected to Octavian rather than support what they saw as Cleopatra's war. Cleopatra insisted on being present at the battle with her fleet of 60 ships. Military historians still debate why. Was it because she didn't trust Antony? Was she protecting her treasure? Whatever the reason, it was a disaster. In the middle of the battle, Cleopatra's ships suddenly fled, and Antony, the great general, the experienced commander, abandoned his fleet and followed her. He left his men to die while he chased after his lover. Can you imagine being one of Antony's soldiers, watching your general sail away after the Egyptian queen while you're still fighting? The battle was lost, not because of superior tactics, but because Antony chose Cleopatra over victory. The ancient historians were brutal about this. Plutarch wrote that Antony showed he was no longer guided by the motives of a commander or a man, or indeed by his own judgment at all. He'd proven Octavian's propaganda right. He really was Cleopatra's puppet. After Actium, it was only a matter of time. Antony and Cleopatra fled to Alexandria, but their allies abandoned them one by one. Who wants to side with the losers? The final year was a tragedy worthy of Shakespeare, who did in fact write about it. Antony, once the most powerful man in Rome, was reduced to sending desperate letters to Octavian, offering to retire to private life. Cleopatra tried to negotiate separately, even allegedly trying to seduce Octavian's messengers. The end came in 30 BCE. When Octavian's forces arrived, Antony received false news that Cleopatra was dead. Devastated, he fell on his sword, but he botched even that. The wound wasn't immediately fatal. As he lay dying, he learned Cleopatra was actually alive, holed up in her mausoleum. They carried the bleeding Antony to Cleopatra's hiding place, hauling him up through a window because she wouldn't open the doors, fearing capture. He died in her arms after telling her to make peace with Octavian if she could. But Cleopatra knew there would be no peace. Octavian needed her alive for his triumph in Rome, to parade the foreign queen in chains through the streets. That was a humiliation she wouldn't endure. Her suicide, whether by asp or poison, was her final act of defiance. She would die as a queen, not live as a trophy. She was buried beside Antony, together in death, as they'd been in their catastrophic life. Caesar and Antony get all the press, but they weren't Cleopatra's only lovers. And for the others, anonymity didn't mean safety. Before Caesar, there were rumors of affairs with other powerful men. Pompey's son Gnaeus was supposedly one of them. These men had to navigate not just Cleopatra's affections, but the deadly politics of the late Ptolemaic dynasty. Cross the wrong person and you'd find yourself poisoned at a banquet or strangled in your sleep. Even being rumored as Cleopatra's lover could be dangerous. The Roman propaganda machine was so effective that any association with her became toxic. Men who'd merely been friendly with her found their reputations destroyed, their loyalty questioned. And let's not forget her two brother husbands. Ptolemy XIII died fighting Caesar, a war that started because his sister wife chose a Roman lover over him. Ptolemy XIV, her second brother husband, mysteriously died shortly after Cleopatra returned from Rome. Ancient sources hint she had him poisoned. Being Cleopatra's husband was apparently even more dangerous than being her lover. Let's talk about what it was actually like, day to day, being Cleopatra's lover. You're not just dating a woman, you're dating an institution, a goddess queen, a political force of nature. Every moment was a performance. Cleopatra didn't just eat dinner. She hosted symposiums where every word could be reported to enemies. She didn't just have conversations. She negotiated the fate of nations. Her lovers weren't just partners. They were political allies, military protectors, and propaganda tools. Imagine the pressure. One wrong move, one sign of weakness, and you're not just losing a girlfriend. You're potentially destabilizing the entire Eastern Mediterranean. No pressure, right? The jealousy must have been unbearable. Not just romantic jealousy, though that too, but political jealousy. Every ambassador, every general, every merchant prince who got too close was a potential threat. Was she actually attracted to them, or was it strategy? Could you ever really know? And then there was the culture clash. Romans prided themselves on their austere virtue, their simple lifestyle, their republican values. But Cleopatra's court was pure Hellenistic excess. Golden plates, exotic foods, elaborate ceremonies, divine worship. Her lovers had to navigate between two worlds, never fully accepted in either. So why did they do it? Why did some of the most powerful men in the ancient world risk everything for Cleopatra? Because she was more than just a woman. She was an experience. She represented everything Rome officially despised but secretly desired. Wealth, culture, sophistication, divine authority, and yes, sexual freedom. She was the ultimate forbidden fruit, but the price was astronomical. Julius Caesar's relationship with her contributed to his assassination. Mark Antony lost an empire, his reputation, and his life. Lesser lovers faced disgrace, exile, or death. The last pharaoh of Egypt had a way of bringing down everyone who got too close. In the end, being Cleopatra's lover was like being Icarus. You got to fly close to the sun, to experience power and passion beyond imagination. But the wings always melted, the fall was always coming, and when you hit the ground, you hit hard. Cleopatra herself paid the ultimate price, dying at 39, her kingdom absorbed by Rome, her children murdered or disappeared. But she achieved a different kind of immortality. Her name still echoes through history, still synonymous with power, beauty, and danger. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history's most dangerous dating scenario, make sure to like and subscribe.